in Victoria Falls, it's a relatively small volume of plastic with a detrimental high impact. So we needed something else, a magic ingredient that would make it viable to clean up and process these relatively small volumes of plastic in these ecological areas.
8:30, and it must be Tuesday or Thursday, and it's time for
climate future. I didn't do the .com. Boom, we did it. We managed to do this on 70 podcasts and counting, and so far, no one has hung up on us yet, so that's a good sign. Our working principle is it's so bad that it may become good. You go all the way across. So we'll see.
As you already mentioned, they didn't run away, so you already said they, because today we have 3 people. And I think it's a premiere. I don't think we ever had 3 people. But before I say who these people are, maybe we also put some stress on the location from the people that we're talking to today, because it's not in Europe, it's on another continent, so to speak. And
okay.
Let me introduce 3 men behind Elle Collection. And I think I give it first to you to introduce who is who before we dive into what Elle Collection is actually doing. So who am I talking to first?
So first off, it's Simon. We're all friends from Victoria Falls, and I'm running the sort of operations and strategic side of the Ele Collection business model.
Hi, my name is Rainer. I've been in construction for the last 15 years, 8 of which have been running my own business here in Victoria Falls. So we've got a very well-established running business here. I employ over 100 people, and we've got several projects on the go at the same time. And I've always, since the day I moved here, I've seen the plastic problem, which is serious around here. So I've always wanted to do something about that. And that over time, we'll tell you more about the story, but that's ultimately what got us all together. But even before that, we've been great friends for a long time, before even the inception.
All right.
And then the third one.
I'm Ben Norton. I currently and have for a long time worked for people on other continents. So I'm extremely excited to be on this project. I'm gifted with the headache of trying to fill plastic and collect it and bring it to our processing factory to hand over to Rainer. So I'm kind of collections director, which I don't think is a real title, but that's what we call it.
For now, it is. It is now, officially so.
Great.
Yep.
Great. So we already had some keywords. So it's going to be about a problem with plastic waste. That's what we always call it. And of course, we know the story, and it's a really inspiring story because it's really comes from the heart. That's what we talked about offline with John before, and now we're super happy to have all 3 of you here with us, and especially sharing the story of Elle Collection. So let's dive right into it. So who's going to start and tell us a bit more about how did you start with Elle Collection, and what was actually the moment or the situation that sparked the idea for your venture now?
So I'll start, Simon. And basically 2.5 years ago to the day, I was kayaking with Ben Norton's father from Rapids 1 to 5. Anyone who's a kayaker will know the Zambezi is one of the iconic rivers for whitewater rafting. And you can kayak 5 grade 5 rapids in an afternoon and climb out. And what we usually do is we climb out and then we run back to our car, which is the collection point, to go back to the bikes and pull them up. And we've done this run 100 times over. And we ran into a group of bull elephants. But when I say ran into, it's a strong term. They were 100 to 120 meters away in the distance. Now, usually the way elephants behave is they don't behave at all when you're that distance away. And this elephant took off from 0 to 42 kilometers an hour, which is the top speed of an elephant, in a straight line, straight for us. I shouted, Larry, run. When an elephant's like that, there's nothing to do but try to get out of its way. And we thought we were going to try to make the railway line. So everyone who knows railway lines, they tend to have an embankment. And the railway line in Victoria Falls, where we were, is kind of the immigration where the border of Zambia and Zimbabwe is. It's actually at the confluence of the Victoria Falls itself. And our only hope was to make it to this railway line. We were sprinting through the bush, but we had to move in zigzags. When an elephant's charging you, it sounds like Jurassic Park. It's like, it's a scream that chills to your body. And Larry, he's a bit older than me, he's sort of double my age. He just wasn't keeping up with the pace, and I was shouting, "Run, Larry, run!" And I remember hearing him scream, "Simon!" And I knew it was a last stand kind of cry. And I turned around to see this elephant bearing down on him. Now, when an elephant's charging at full pace, they charge with their head upright, and when they're about to hit you, they flap their ears back and they drop their head down. At that point, Larry picked up a rock, and I don't know, God's intervention or adrenaline, the power of an adrenaline kick. He threw the missile, threw the rock as a missile, and it hit the elephant square in the forehead. And you can imagine the impact of a 30-kilometer missile hitting a 42-kilometer elephant. No one in the guide or hunter's history has ever stopped an elephant with a rock, but this happened. Lucky because of the time of year. So that time of year, elephants throw a lot of dust on their heads. The rock hit the elephant and stunned it, but also temporarily, the dust temporarily blinded it. And so Larry was standing within 2 arms length of the elephant when it finally stopped at him. And it was so blinded, it tried to hit Larry with its trunk as it came down, but Larry ducked under its trunk. And we ran and was still enraged and kind of discombobulated and blinded by the sand. And we kept running to the railway line with this elephant behind us, and we dived onto the embankment that makes that railway line. And luckily, there were all these curio guys that sell curios there, and they've been charged by elephants and stuff before. And there was about 20 of them with rocks, but standing at almost the height of the elephant because of the embankment. And the elephant saw this and got spooked and ran back into the bush, screaming just screaming, really angry that he hadn't sort of managed to make his target. Anyway, having grown up in the bush my whole life, I'd never experienced a charge like this from nowhere. Usually animals only charge when they're provoked in any way. This was totally unprovoked. And as it so happens, somebody had been killed, a guide had been killed, a professional in the bush had been killed in the same area 2 weeks before that. Incidentally, someone was killed a week after. And when they killed the elephant, they in its stomach was full of plastic. And so it led us down a rabbit hole. So that's how I started talking to Rainer and talking to Ben about this harrowing story. And we started to investigate into what was causing this frenzy in the elephants, because this occurrence was happening every year. And as it turns out, it's happening in Kariba. We have reports of it happening in Kariba, in the Lowveld, in other ecological areas, anywhere where there's communities and elephant populations. The elephants are coming in and they're eating plastic. So they're coming in for the plastic, and then they're digesting the plastic. And what they're contracting is a disease that at first was known in bird populations, known as plasticosis. And it causes an inflammation of the digestive tract. And the inflammation gets worse and worse until eventually they cannot eat. Their pain is excruciating and they eventually die. Now, an elephant that's in that sort of aggravation is a very angry creature. Elephants are emotional. They have personalities like humans. And you can imagine when you have when your stomach is so full of ulcers that it's painful to eat, and you're not able to eat refuge, and you see a human being and you're in a community, we believe this is what's causing all of the human-wildlife conflict in the region. So that set us on the journey. We were like, we need to solve the plastic problem. And we'll get into recycling and stuff, but that's what triggered the Ele Collection and the journey that me, Ben, and Rainer have now been on for 2 years.
And where does the plastic waste
Yeah.
come from? Like, is it because for me at least, I've never been in the bush. I've seen elephants in Sri Lanka once, but on a safari, so I cannot really imagine like how close do those elephants or wildlife in general have to come to be in touch also with the plastic waste from our humans.
Okay, so first of all, we live in an area that national parks don't have boundaries, and we are in the heart of what's known as the Casa Frontier Wilderness Area. This is a wilderness area that is roughly in European terms the size of France or Texas. It is wildlife corridors that connect 32 national parks over the expanse of Angola, Namibia, Botswana, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. Within that conservation area is 3 million people living. Not only that, you can compound it with the number of tourists visiting Victoria Falls each year, which is 1 million tourists. And with that, there is no waste management in the region. Plastic is either dumped in municipal dump sites, which is open-air dump sites, that elephants, bird life, warthogs, any indiscriminate eater eats on these dump sites. This is not an isolated problem with elephants. It's just elephants pull the heartstrings of humans, but baboons, hyenas, all sorts of bird life, bush pigs, anything that eats on those dumps is eating this plastic indiscriminately. And it doesn't take very much plastic they've found to create plasticosis. There's no waste management solution. There's no recycling solution in the region. And there's no proper landfill or anything. And that plastic either compiles on the dumps or it's set alight. And sometimes those dumps can burn for 3 weeks at a time. And the smoke can get so bad that it blows into the whole town, which is a tourist town around one of the 7 wonders of the world.
Yeah. Question I have is I mean, this story is just really a harrowing account of things going wrong with the developments of man coming to Mother Nature and plastic waste accumulating and so on. Do you have any, prior to this, did you have any connection to the world of plastics other than as a consumer of plastics? Yeah.
Not really. No, I mean, I obviously, as all of us, we would see plastic and not like it. And if honestly, it was out of sight, out of mind. If it was reaching the dump, it had done its job. And I never wholly embraced the level of the problem. And it was only when we started digging that we found the level that the problem goes. In Zimbabwe alone, so we have cholera epidemics every year in Zambia and Zimbabwe. In 2009, the cholera epidemic over a 3-month period killed 4,900 people. That is directly attributed to plastic. So cholera E. coli attaches to plastic, which floats down storm drains. And when that storm drain blocks, the cholera spreads through that stagnant water. And then people in communities drink that water and they catch this epidemic. To give you a scope or a parameter to set, the COVID-19 epidemic killed 5,500 people over the entire country. The one cholera epidemic in 2009 killed almost as many people due to plastic pollution. No year starts differently, it's just not in the news, but this year started the same, with 300 people dying between Zimbabwe and Zambia from a cholera epidemic in 2024. That's the level it goes to, just in terms of cities and high density communities. But the wildlife problem we've discovered, you mentioned Sri Lanka. There's an article out recently with 5 dead elephants on top of a Sri Lankan dump. You've probably seen it. We have reports of this coming out of Kariba and the Lowveld, and basically every ecological zone that has a community in it, this problem exists for that wildlife.
So one of the causes that also you are focusing on tackling is actually the challenges in recycling infrastructure, but also recycling technologies. And I can imagine that basically when it's compared, for example, to Germany, where I live, where people have a very advanced recycling infrastructure, there's probably none or a very simple recycling infrastructure. Can you tell us more about that, and what are basically also the challenges for you guys if you want to change something or improve the recycling rates there in Victoria Falls?
So this is also the rabbit hole we went down. Is we found that recycling a limited solution. You can only recycle something 4 or 5 times before you have to add more plastic to keep its properties. Not only that, recycling is only viable on a large scale. So in these ecological areas, recycling is not viable as a business solution. But mechanical recycling, which does plastics 1 and 2 and sometimes 3, HDPE, PET, and LDPE, that's limited in Zimbabwe at best, and it's only limited to those types of plastic. And we needed a solution that did plastics 1 to 7, all of the plastics that cannot be recycled, which is where we got onto the eco aggregate solution, which Rainer will discuss. But again, that doesn't work on like in Victoria Falls. It's a relatively small volume of plastic with a detrimental high impact. So we needed something else, a magic ingredient that would make it viable to clean up and process these relatively small volumes of plastic in these ecological areas, and that's where plastic credits come to the fold.
Yeah. So your story, you have this encounter with the elephant, and you discover this problem of plasticosis, and you see that it's very much related to the buildup of plastic waste in the environment, and now with Elle Collection, you've kind of mobilized and you're doing something about this. How did you go from experiencing this trauma with the elephant charge to doing something about it? I mean, I find that really fascinating and inspiring. But can you tell us more about how did you get from the actual drama of what happened to where you are now as far as doing something about it?
So that's kind of where my story will follow on, and where all of our stories intertwine. So just a bit of personal background on my part of the story. Like I said, I've noticed the plastic problem, been very aware of it for a long time. And I've always wanted to do something about it, but it's just remained an idea in my head. And the original inspiration was a company in Kenya, and they make plastic bricks out of plastic and sand, and they use that for paving and stuff. So we thought that was a pretty cool idea. And then again, it stayed as an idea until Simon and I actually had breakfast the day after his elephant ordeal, and he was super energized from this whole experience. It gave him a whole new lease on life. And we started talking about the elephant's aggression. Then we started talking about the dead elephant at the dump, with its stomach full of plastic, and we just sort of merged our ideas. So Simon's inquisitiveness after that ordeal, and my idea of doing something with the plastic and making these plastic bricks, that's when it all kicked off. And then, of course, Ben joined the team because we couldn't just do it by the two of us. And that's when we started going down the rabbit hole and exploring. We did a whole business model around the plastic bricks, and then we realized this isn't actually the solution because it's just going to consume such a tiny piece of the problem. So the current recycling efforts in Victoria Falls are dismal, almost non-existent. I think last year or the year before, there was a total of 2 tons of plastic collected, and it was sent off to South Africa or to Harare to be recycled because we don't have any local facilities for that. This makes the whole idea of plastic recycling totally unviable for a business. And that led us down then the discovery of plastic credits, which was suddenly a viable solution to fund this unviable project here, but it's so necessary. And then as we went on, speaking to more people, there's a guy, Loki Osborne, who is heavily involved with us. He was actually inspired us to get going because he was the one that was involved in the autopsy of this elephant that had its stomach full of plastic. So he said to us, "I'll back you guys. Let's find a solution." So Loki also funded an electric fence that was built around the dump site here in Vic Falls, which is trying to keep the animals out, but it's specifically aimed at the elephants. But the elephants are so intelligent that they can come and unhook wires with their tusks, and generally they get through. They have managed to keep elephants out of the dump for the last 2 years with a lot of maintenance and a lot of attention around the dump site. So it takes a full-time crew to monitor this dump and keep the elephants away. They can't keep out the baboons and the birds and all the things. They just crawl on through the fence. So yes, it's helping these massive animals, but the larger problem is the plastic is there. If there's a big wind, the plastic is just strewn all over the place. As Simon mentioned earlier, when the dump catches on fire, because it's a plastic burning, it doesn't stop. It can pour down with rain, and this fire just continues and continues. So Loki's wife actually introduced us to the technology. So we then went down the rabbit hole and learned more and more about this new technology. It's actually a very simple technology. It's nothing fancy, nothing new. It's a simple extrusion process, a slightly modified extruder. And how it works is basically we collect all types of plastic. It's indiscriminate type. It accepts up to 10% contaminants, so a bit of dirt, a bit of food waste, a bit of liquid left in there. It really doesn't matter. We shred that up and we batch it by density. So we're not even really sorting to a great extent. We're just putting high density, medium density, low density plastics in, and those are blended proportionally to keep a consistent density of the plastic feedstock going in. And then that's mixed with a mineral additive, which is a master blend, a master batch, which is kind of like a secret ingredient. We don't even know what it is. Together with a mixture of waste glass, which we crush up. And so the minerals and the glass become the binder for the plastic as it goes through the extrusion process. So the plastic is not really on the surface of the aggregate as it comes out. And it has a very rough texture, rough, gritty texture. So when we mix it now into concrete as a replacement to a portion of the natural aggregates in concrete, which is another good property of this product, we are saving up to 20% of the natural aggregates into concrete and replacing it with this eco aggregate, which is quite a high percentage. Generally, people aim for about 10% of an eco additive into their concrete to make it green concrete. So we're pushing that up to 20, and we're yet to do more tests, but we will experiment further. So after the extrusion process, mixed with all the minerals and the glass, the plastic it becomes inert, so it no longer emits any gases if it starts degrading, and an animal could swallow it and it would pass through their system without harm. Once it's mixed in the concrete, it binds chemically and mechanically with the cement, so it's really difficult to separate it from that. So the entire lifespan of the concrete, the plastic is locked into that concrete. At the end of its lifespan, we can still crush that up and return it back into recycled aggregate into new concrete again. So it's a really innovative solution, really simple. It doesn't use as much energy as conventional recycling. It's indiscriminate of the types of plastic. So we found that this is going to be the long-term solution for Victoria Falls.
And what's the goals now? So you said you've done some tests. You know that it works. You have probably prototype maybe some of the process. What is then the outcome? Is it like, using, can it be used like concrete basically, or do you want to sell bricks, or do you want to now establish a larger plant? What's kind of like the next steps that you're imagining and that you're working on?
So our first steps is to set up our pilot plant in Victoria Falls. We want to solve the immediate problem, the most sensitive problem, and the problem that is most evident. So with the pilot plant in Vic Falls, through my construction company, we will consume the majority of that plastic. As we scale up, of course, we're going to have to find other off-takers. We have already been in talks with several premix concrete producers, precast concrete product makers, and other construction companies. Get their commitment to use this product. The beauty is that at a price point, it's going to only affect a building marginally. It's really not going to affect the bottom line, maybe by 0.5% or 1%. And given the value that the story adds to the aggregate, we think it's a pretty good sell. And as you guys have been so well sold by it, absolutely everyone we speak to is as invigorated and excited about this product. So I don't think it's going to be a hard sell. But on top of that, we are going to add further value by creating our own precast concrete company, making bricks, which we'll call Elle bricks and blocks. And we will eventually, it's going to be a slow process, introducing one product at a time. The Zimbabwe market is very volatile and it's very small, industrially. So if we try to introduce a product that's wildly different, it's not really going to sell. So it's another beauty of this product. When you put it in concrete, it looks no different, feels no different. It actually slightly improves the properties of concrete. So it's another plus right there. It's slightly lighter, slightly more flexible, so it doesn't crack as much, which also gives it more tensile strength. So overall, there aren't many downsides to this product. Other thing I must add is in the extrusion process, it's a very low temperature. So it doesn't emit any noxious fumes or poisonous gases. And if there are any little bits that are emitted, we do have air scrubbers and filters that will capture that. So in terms of breathability around the process, there's absolutely no problem there. And yeah, we've thought of all of that. And because we're working with Vera on our plastic credit verification, the guidelines are super, super strict. So we really have to adhere to all the health and safety measures and make sure that there's no poisonous negative effects for the people working around the plant.
And is it so that your source that you're beginning with is the dump location where the electric fence is up now? Is that really basically where you're going to go get the raw material for your process?
I'm going to hand you over to Ben, and he's going to continue the story.
So that's you can call it a headache or an opportunity. That's another big part of the business, is how do we capture all of this plastic? How do we create as fine a net as possible to catch it? Ideally, for our process, we want to catch as much at source. It just means that the plastic is clean, which makes the processing easier, and it requires less sorting. So we kind of have a two-pronged approach for this. So to catch it at the source, we'll work with a lot of the big organizations here. A lot of the plastic is either industrial or it comes from tourism. So we'll work with the hotels, we'll train their staff. We will go do collections from them every month. And then we'll collect from residents as well. In Victoria Falls, we have like a low density area, which is higher income. So from these areas, we can collect from them for free. And everyone here, a lot of people are involved in tourism. People love the environment. Everyone wants this problem to be solved. So people will do it by their own accord a lot of the time. So we'll collect for free. But probably the biggest problem area that we have is the townships. And this is it's tricky because we have, as Simon mentioned, we have very little waste management. So we do have waste management. It's in the areas where people can afford to pay their council fees. The council trucks come and collect it. But in the townships, people just can't afford it, and our council is under-resourced and under-skilled, so they just don't go and collect in these areas. So what happens is our city dump is a little out of town. People don't have vehicles; they can't go to the city dump. So what they do is they create illegal dumps and dump on the periphery of town, which in a normal city would be bad enough. But in Victoria Falls, we're surrounded by 3 different national parks. So you can imagine all of these animals are addicted to the sugary food waste, and they come in and eat from these dumps. So our solution is to collect at source as much as we can. But we thought, how do we motivate people that are worried about their next meal to consider the plastic issue? Of course, people aren't worried about it. And for some context, in Zimbabwe, and these are not Ele Collection facts, this is from the World Bank, there's 6 million people in Zimbabwe living on less than $1 a day. We're probably a population of about 17 million people. Victoria Falls in a province called Matabeleland, which is in the north of the country, and we're probably the poorest. We are the poorest province in the country. So even the people that are living on more than $1 a day, it's not much more than that. So how do you ask people that are struggling with so much to care about a plastic problem? And to be frank, you attach a price tag to plastic. It's happened in our country before. We used to have a big problem with aluminium cans. In the 90s, recycling started here, it became viable. You don't see aluminium cans as much anymore. So our idea is to create a central collection center. In that area, all of our plastic will come to it and get baled and stored, where I can hand my problem over to Rainer for processing. But to make it easier for everyone, we're going to what we call collection points. So in the township, we'll have these little hubs where families or individuals can bring their plastic, deposit it, get it weighed, and get paid for it. But we'll go further than the townships as well. We want to tackle this problem as far as we can. So outside of Victoria Falls, we have a lot of rural villages. So we're going to tap into the existing social system here, where in every village there's usually a headman, their nominated leader. In these areas where they don't have electricity a lot of the time, we're going to create hand balers, and through the headman, people can gather their plastic, come and bale it, and they'll get paid. And that, it's such an exciting part of the solution, because we're not just helping the environment, we can really solve it with the community. But there's certain areas that are really big problems. You mentioned the landfill is one, and where there's a problem, there's a solution for us. We need the plastic. So there's the landfills, and as I said, they're legal dumps. And the way that we're going to tackle that is with all women's collection teams. We have great gender disparity in terms of employment in Victoria Falls. So we're going to pair a lot of the time with existing organizations, one of which is called Zion City, where there's a lot of women that are very vulnerable and they can't find any means of employment. We're going to create teams of 12 at a time. And with that, we can find all of these pockets of plastic that we see all of the time that are such a big problem, and send these teams in to collect from these areas. It works out for us as well, because we've done quite a few experiments with these collection processes. And we found if I'm honest, we found that women collect more. Young men, for example, are very enthusiastic, dive into it, and then they get quite bored. So these ladies are absolutely great. And past that, we've worked out that even at less than a full day's work, they can collect up to 100 kgs of plastic. At a minimum, we can pay 10 cents a kg. So these women will be earning $10 a day, which is 10 times the dollar average. Coming from the first world, it might not sound like a lot, but that's dramatically going to change these women's lives and their families' lives. So that's our basic collection strategy. It'll have great effects, but what we've seen is it's about more than plastic, and it's about more than employment. There's so many other issues here that are rooted in desperation, really. We have poaching problems here, animal poaching with snares. We have wood poaching. We have a big prostitution problem, and no one wants to do these informal jobs, but they're desperate to make an income. So the more that we can alleviate the desperation, the knock-on effects are very dramatic.
Do you consider then the plastic credit mechanism as one of your key mechanisms to include also the social aspects, and it's not only like a purely commercial business case, but it's really also involving and kind of activating also the local communities and creating also an extra portion of awareness that is needed in order to not wait until maybe in 5 years something changes, the government changes, and then everyone falls back to the same pattern. So is this how would you rate like these plastic credit mechanisms? Because I mean it's a pretty rather new concept also that is now being involved in tackling plastic waste problem in general.
Yeah, look, we couldn't offer what we're offering to the community with normal recycling practices. That's an absolute certainty. The only reason that we can make this kind of social impact is because of the extra financing from plastic credits. That's what makes the difference for us. And the other side to it is that the more difference that you make, the more your plastic credit is worth, which makes perfect sense. So you are literally incentivized to make as much of a difference as you possibly can. So the more that you are helping communities, the more that you earn. And I can't think of a greater financial instrument to do what we need to do. In Victoria Falls, this problem's been going on for decades. There's been no shortage of people that have wanted to get into recycling, that have wanted to solve these issues. But every single time they've got down to the crux of it, is it financially viable? It hasn't been. And that's why nothing's happened here for so long. So finding the credit system was the absolute game changer for us. That's what made this absolutely possible.
And what are now, because as a next step, you said you want to set up the pilot plan. So obviously this also needs investments and so on. So what are ways that you're going to finance the next steps? Like, do you get also maybe support from the governments? Is there something like this happening, or do you really have to rely on private money and investments and I don't know, maybe crowdfunding?
Yeah. So look, we've done a mix of everything. We're open to everything. Unfortunately, there's zero chance of us getting government support. And we've known that from the beginning. So we've been open to everything. We've done some crowdfunding, which has been great. It's got us some of the needs that we've had. If anyone's listening and they want to check out our crowdfunding, it's www.elecollection.fund, which is a huge help, especially for these beginning stages. But in terms of buying machinery, in terms of needing trucks, in terms of operations, we've had to look elsewhere, and we've looked at a mix of everything. We've had some amazing equity investors come in, impact investors that have taken the risk to come in and help us. We are in the process of applying to a lot of grant funding. We've actually recently had some success with that, which is extremely encouraging. But if I'm honest, right now, we are still in that stage. We are still in the stage of fundraising. So I guess the biggest call that I can put to anyone that's out there, if they have ideas for us, if they have any idea of people that we should speak to, grant funding investors, anything like that, we're really open to conversations. We found the more that we've talked about this problem, the more people have cared about it, and the more they've connected us with the right people, which has made all the difference. It's really shaped the project.
I think we can put our heads on this and come up with some ideas on this for sure. Hey, a question regarding the pilot plant. First of all, a confession here, guys. I'm perhaps indirectly responsible for millions and millions of metric tons of plastic being made every year, because I started my career working for one of the polymer majors in the U.S. In a pilot plant, figuring out how to make as much stuff of this as we possibly can. And then I moved over to Europe, and I did the same thing with the European major. So I have some experience in pilot plants, but I'm kind of the guy making the stuff that's kind of if not handled in the right way, because I'm certainly not anti-plastic at all. But I mean, the problem is how it's treated, how it's how it ends up as waste and in the environment. But I'm wondering about the pilot plant. To what extent can you tell us about what will this pilot plant be made up of? I'm curious what type of kit you'll be putting in place with the pilot plant to develop the process to a commercial process ultimately.
I mean, like I said earlier, the process is actually fairly simple. So we're going to be getting a small modular plant that's going to be installed in a 40-foot container, together with a few small silos to feed stock. As I said, we're going to have the high density, low density, and medium density. So the machine's pretty automated, and it'll adjust the quantities of the feedstock going in automatically. It will then shred the plastic. I think there's a process of drying. I'm still yet. I'm actually going to be going to Thailand to view the machine before we actually close the deal and fully understand the process. But it's basically a shred, batch, mix with the minerals and additives, extrude, cool, and then granulate according to whatever size granules are needed for concrete. So it'll come out of the extruder roughly a 19 millimeter or 3/4 stone size. And then if we want to, we can crush it down into a sand sort of granule size and anything in between. So it'll perfect for plastering finishes. It gives like floor finishes or wall finishes more durability and strength. And like I said earlier, the overall properties of concrete are increased. Like there's not a lot of water usage either. There's a slight misting for cooling purposes. Our one downside is fairly high power consumption, but for our pilot plant, it's only about 100 kilowatts. So it's nothing major. Once we get the pilot plant running and perfected in Victoria Falls, and we've solved the immediate problem in Victoria Falls, our next step will be a plant in Bulawayo, which is the second biggest city in Zimbabwe. And we're going to scale up to a much bigger plant, which will be exactly the same machinery, but just a bigger scale. And that'll the Victoria Falls pilot plant will process about 30 tons of plastic per shift. So we plan to eventually double shifts and potentially even 24-hour.
So that'd be like 3 shifts, so 3 8-hour shifts. So that.
Yeah. And once we reach the maximum capability of that machine, we just add another machine. So Victoria Falls we're getting plastic from Livingston across the border, hopefully, and various other towns around to make sure we have enough feedstock to make the process viable. I'm sure you know, but volume is our friend when it comes to this.
Yeah, indeed.
And then once we scale up to Bulawayo, we're going to have a much bigger plant that's going to be doing 700 tons a month to start off with, which can scale up to about 2,000. And from there, it's all depends on funding and how quickly we can grow it. We plan to go to Harare and cross the border to Zambia.
Can I add to scale here? So we plan to match the output of Livingston, Wangi, and Victoria Falls in 3 years. That means all of the plastic produced by the towns our machines can match and begin to address all of the historical plastic as well. A 2,000-ton machine, which is the standard machine being done in Thailand and New Zealand, can match the entire consumption of Bulawayo. So to give you an idea of scale, it's not putting a plaster on the wound. It's really addressing all of the plastic output of the population.
And I think what's great is that this is a model that if it runs, in your area, then it's with the learnings and with the infrastructure that you build up, it's some very transferable also into other areas. So you're gonna tackle like huge amounts of plastic waste by piloting it in Victoria Falls, because it's simply something that you could, I guess, copy like McDonald's, no?
I mean, that's why our financial partners, they run a kind of boutique venture capital firm in Harare. Their big draw to it was that it's scalable and addresses the entire problem. And we hope to become the waste management solution in Southern Africa.
Yeah. So I think to anyone that is listening now from the investment side, so that's a perfect scalable business to invest in, right? And I think what's very important before we come to the most important question in the end, I still had one. I mean, none of you has any plastic background or polymer or chemistry background, right?
No.
Yeah. So I think that's a motivation for all our listeners that, to tackle the problems around plastic waste on such a big scale as you're attempting it with Ele Collection. You don't even need to be any specialist in plastics, right? So that's a really cool thing. And I love this idea of thinking big from the beginning, and you actually, as you said, like your problem is actually to get enough volume in the end of raw material, but because the process is fairly scalable in itself. Yeah, very, 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 very cool. So definitely, I think we will have to collect all the web addresses and information that we can put into also the podcast links so that people can connect with you guys. And I think one of the biggest calls to actions is to really, as Ben said, if anyone has ideas and can connect you guys with investors and like-minded initiatives, I think that's something that we can also help with. I think looking at the time, we don't want to let you go before one last question that we have to you guys. And this one is related to, maybe not so much plastic, but rather also something, also something nice. It's about music, because we have our Plastic Climate Future playlist that we populate with songs from all our guests, and we have songs from all different countries, even from Jordan, right? So now having three individuals from Victoria Falls, I think we would like to have 3 different songs, and especially, maybe something that connects to your region. But of course, it can only also be just good music that people should listen to more often. So who wants to start?
That's probably the toughest question.
We take all styles of music. Anything you can bring, we take it. So what's your
Cool. I'm gonna give you guys a classic Zimbabwean song. I just gotta quickly Google who the artist is.
right?
I'll give you that one. This journey, before this journey, I hadn't met my wife, who is now pregnant with my son, who's going to be born in 4 months.
Congratulations!
And when this Ele Collection plastic journey, I also met her, and I think she was inspired by a sense of purpose. And our song is a song called O.C. Elliott, Thinking of You. So the artist is O.C. Elliott, and the song is. And this project, if it's bought me nothing else, has bought me my wife and soon to be son.
Oh wow! That's super.
Scoring some serious points there.
Now, Ben, you have to
see the look on his face.
You have to top this now, Ben. You have to top this.
Well, for any of the ladies listening out there, I don't have a wife. But, but no, you know what I'll put forward? There's this epic band based out of Vic Falls called Flying Bantu. We're friends with all of the boys in Flying Bantu. They're epic. And they're coming out, they have so many good tracks. But one of their favorites is a song called Sunshine City. I've never asked them, but I assume that it's based on Victoria Falls. And that's what we are. I mean, if you could visit here, you'd see it. We got a world wonder, and we got the most epic community. All of these national parks, we are the Sunshine City, but we're the Sunshine City that's been cast with a shadow of plastic. So it's we're a positive project. We're very excited about what we're doing. We come from the Sunshine City, but that's what we are.
Right.
Oh. Now, Rainer, now you have to top this, but you have most of the time to search for the right song.
I guarantee you've never heard of this song, but if you listen to it might inspire some emotion. So this is a song that I just remember for as long as I can from growing up as a child in Zimbabwe, and it's always given me a feeling of like hope and homeliness. I can't really explain it, but that's sort of what it's like. So it's a Zimbabwean band called the Assegai Crew from the 90s, and the song is Kanyama Karibe, which is Knyama, Kanyama. The second word Karipi, Karipi.